just as a patient, clearly aware that he is undergoing an operation, does not feel anything thanks to the anesthetic. So I, without experiencing the slightest excitement, could recite my favorite poems or, without a shadow of a smile, watch how grandfather tries to talk to Swan about the Duke of D. Audifre-Paquier. Grandfather's attempts were not successful. As soon as he asked Swan a question about this orator, one of the grandmother's sisters, whose ears perceived the grandfather's question as a deep but inappropriate silence, which politeness required to break, turned to the other. "You know, Flora, I met a young Swedish teacher and she gave me extremely interesting details about cooperatives in the Scandinavian countries. We'll have to invite her to dinner with us." "Well, of course," Flora replied. "I didn't waste any time either. I met at Vinteuil's with a well-educated old man who knew Mauban well, and Mauban told him in great detail how he was working on the role. Extremely interesting. It turns out that this old man is a neighbor of Vinteuil, and I did not know. He is very kind. Not only Vinteuil has amiable neighbors," exclaimed her sister Sedina, in a voice that was loud with shyness and unnatural with premeditation, and at the same time cast a look at Swan that she called significant. Guessing that Sedina thus expressed gratitude for Asti, Flora also fixed a look on Swan, expressing not only gratitude, but also mockery, either simply emphasizing Gray's resourcefulness, or showing that she envied Swan, since it was he who inspired her sister, or maybe she simply could not to make fun of him, as I was sure that he now feels himself in the position of a defendant. "I think this gentleman will not refuse to come to us," Flora continued. "He can talk about Mauban or Maternus for hours, you just have to start talking about them." "That must be very interesting," said grandfather with a sigh, whose mind nature, unfortunately, completely deprived of the ability to take a keen interest in both Swedish cooperatives and Mauban's work on the role, just as she forgot to give the mind of my sister's grandmothers with at least a grain of salt, without which even a story about the intimate life of Mole or the Count of Paris will seem insipid. "You know," Swan turned to grandfather, "what I'm about to tell you now has more to do with your question than it might seem at first glance, because if you look at life from a certain angle, you can't help but come to the conclusion that she hasn't changed much. In the morning I reread Saint Simon and found a place of interest to you. It is in the volume where Saint Simon tells how he was ambassador to Spain. This is not one of his best volumes, Before You is just a diary, but a wonderfully written diary, and in this alone its enormous advantage over the most boring newspapers that we consider ourselves obliged to read in the morning and in the evening. I don't agree with you, sometimes reading newspapers is a great pleasure." His grandmother Flora interrupted him, alluding to an article in Le Figaro about a painting by Corot that belonged to Swan. "This is when newspapers report on events or people that interest us." Grandma Sedina picked up. "Yes, I don't argue against that," Swan remarked with surprise. "I blame the newspapers for drawing our attention to various trifles every day, and books that talk about important things. We read some 3 or 4 times in our lives. If we so impatiently tear every morning the parcel in which the newspaper is enclosed, it means that we need to change the state of things and print in the newspaper, well, let's say, Pascal's thoughts.